It's May 20th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with overseas voting for South Korea's presidential election. Voting for Korean nationals living abroad began on Tuesday in 118 countries around the world. The Democratic Party's Lee Jae-myung and the People Power Party's Kim Moon-soo continue to seek support in the capital area, while the Reform Party's Jun-seok is targeting voters in the southwestern region. Russian President Vladimir Putin refused to agree to an immediate ceasefire with Ukraine in a phone call with U.S. President Donald Trump, who insisted afterwards that Russia and Ukraine would return to dialogue for a ceasefire. South Korea's trade delegation is off to Washington, D.C. on Tuesday for the second round of negotiations with U.S. officials since the 90-day tariff pause was introduced. The talks this time will focus on technical discussions on 6 areas related to trade, including trade imbalances. We are now exactly 2 weeks away from the snap presidential election. The Democratic Party's Lee Jae-myung is stretching out his campaign trail here in the metropolitan area, hunting for support from voters of all ages. Our Shin Ha-young starts us off.
The Democratic Party's candidate Lee Jae-myung is back in Seoul and continued his campaign rallies, making stops in busy areas across the city after traveling south last week. He kicked off his Monday campaign by visiting the Korean Senior Citizens Association, where he thanked the older generation for playing a big role in South Korea's growth and asked them to share their wisdom with the younger generation.
After meeting elderly voters, Lee Jae-myung continued his rally at Seoul's busy Yongsan Station Plaza, aiming to reach both younger and older generations to highlight unity across age groups.
Life is tough, isn't it? Things feel unstable. On June 3rd, let's bring this to an end. Let's build a new country together, one where people are truly respected and where peace and stability lead to a better, happier life.
Ahead of the rally on Monday, he addressed real estate issues, saying that he will manage real estate policy by increasing supply when it's lacking, following the basic principle of supply and demand. The Democratic Party is strengthening security for Lee after receiving multiple reports of suspected assassination threats against him. Starting from Monday, Lee began delivering his rally speeches from behind bulletproof glass. This comes as concerns over Lee's safety are growing within the party and among his supporters, especially after he was stabbed in the neck during a visit to Busan in January last year. He has already been wearing a 3-kilogram bulletproof vest while campaigning.
Inequality, polarization, and insurrection have pushed our society into extreme division and conflict, to the point where a presidential candidate now has to wear a bulletproof vest while campaigning.
His camp is also keeping people away from areas near the stage, and he's avoiding physical contact with supporters, such as shaking hands. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
And the People Power Party's Kim Moon-soo also continues to expand his campaign here in the capital. He started off the week by stressing his vision for the ROK-U.S. alliance, while insinuating a possible merger with Reform Party candidate Lee Jun-seok. Our Kim Do-yeon reports.
On the campaign trail on Monday, People Power Party candidate Kim Moon-soo emphasized the ROK-U.S. alliance, saying that he will meet with U.S. President Donald Trump as soon as he's elected amid the ongoing tariff negotiations.
If I'm elected president, I will visit the United States as early as June to hold a prompt summit with President Trump and swiftly resolve issues that are hindering economic cooperation between our two countries.
The comments came during a luncheon with the American Chamber of Commerce in Korea. He added he'll promote Korea-U.S. business cooperation in advanced technology and culture, not just security. Kim also pledged to remove unnecessary regulations to attract more foreign investment. This comes after Kim claimed his DP rival Lee Jae-myung is too pro-China during the first televised debate the night before. In other campaign activities and rallies around Seoul, he also gave pledges to the younger generations on Coming of Age Day, vying to create jobs, expand opportunities, and ease financial burdens related to marriage and housing. Meanwhile, much attention was given to his gesture toward the Reform Party's Jun-seok with an idea of conservative and anti-Lee Jae-myung alliance looming over the election scene. The two met at a Seoul City event where Kim apologized for the PPP's past treatment of Lee when he was party chair and praised his debate performance from the night before. During the Amcham talk, Kim also hinted that a merger may be possible.
Things are gradually improving. If you watched the debate yesterday, you would have seen Reform Party candidate Jun-seok. He used to be our party leader, and now he's out there representing a certain segment. If I can bring together people like him and unify our efforts, I believe we can bring about significant change.
Jun-seok has so far rejected the idea of a merger, and the current polls show that even combined, their ratings trail DP's Lee Jae-myung. But with the election now just 2 weeks away, a last-minute conservative alliance could still shift the race. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
In the meantime, the Reform Party's Jun-seok is back in Gwangju City with an aggressive push to convince voters he is the ultimate conservative runner. Earlier on Monday, he rolled out PPP candidate Kim Moon-soo's hint of a possible merger with him, and instead stressed the race will be him against the Democratic Party's Lee Jae-myung. He also went around Gwangju City pledging more diverse investment in the Jeollado provinces. Now, he is expected to do the same on his second day in the southwestern region on Tuesday and continue his campus cafeteria outreach to college students. Now, the 21st presidential election kicks off early for overseas Koreans. Voting for Korean nationals overseas will begin on Tuesday in more than 100 countries around the world. We have our Oh Soo-young in the studio with the full details. Good morning, Soo-young.
Good morning, Tammy.
So as far as I know, the voting for overseas Koreans have already kicked off in the Asia Pacific.
Yes, you're right, Tammy. Polls have opened about 5 hours ago in countries like New Zealand and Fiji and will stretch throughout the week before the polls finally close in Hawaii. Now, overseas voting for South Korea's 21st presidential election is being held from Tuesday to Sunday local time in 118 countries. Now, voting hours are from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. According to the National Election Commission, overseas ballots for registered voters have been installed at 182 Korean embassies, consulates, diplomatic missions and offices. There's usually one polling station per country, but 39 additional polling stations have been installed where the number of overseas nationals exceeds 30,000. Now, in the United States, these include the states of New York, California, Massachusetts and Texas, opening from Thursday to Saturday. Voting booths were also added for the Korean military's Dongmyeong unit in Lebanon and the Hanbit units in Uganda. Now, specific times and locations can be found on the consulate websites.
Well, Soo-young, this is where you remind our viewers and overseas voters what to remember before they head to the polling stations.
Right. Luckily, there are just a few things to remember. So you're definitely going to need a proof of identification issued by the Korean government, which includes a photo. So you can bring your passport, resident registration card or a driver's license. Also, official ID issued by your country of residence is also acceptable. Those who have immigrated abroad or have permanent residency, though, they need to bring a second document to prove that they remain solely Korean citizens. So a visa or proof of permanent residency would do. If it includes a photograph, then no additional ID is required. Now, once you receive your ballot paper, there are various precautions to be taken. Now, bear in mind that taking photos or videos and live broadcasting are strictly prohibited. Furthermore, voters must not tear or damage the ballot paper. Even if a mistake is made while marking the ballot, a new one will not be provided, so you'll have to be very careful. And having said that, presidential candidate number 6, Gwangju of the Liberty Unification Party, has withdrawn from the race. But the ballot paper for overseas Koreans, they've already been printed and distributed. So if you mark number 6, your ballot will be made invalid. So please avoid doing that.
Right. Well, it seems more Koreans overseas have registered to cast their votes in this presidential election. Is that so, Seong?
Yes, Tammy, you're right. So 258,000 are registered to cast their ballots overseas this year. That's 14% more than for the previous presidential election. Now, this time around, polling stations have been installed for the first time in 4 countries where new diplomatic missions were recently established. The countries would be Cuba, Luxembourg, Lithuania and Estonia as well. And suffrage is, of course, the most basic and essential of all fundamental rights in democracy. So South Korea's election authority asserts that any restriction on it must be kept to the absolute minimum. So we're seeing more and more countries, locations and options to guarantee and encourage voting for South Koreans everywhere. Now note that anyone wishing to vote must have been registered by last month, so now is unfortunately a bit too late. It does take time, of course, to send ballot papers to each country and then receive them back via diplomatic pouch. The votes would be counted along with other ballots after the June 3rd election closes. Now, if anyone signed up to vote abroad, but are unable to do so for whatever reason in their country of residence, it's still possible to vote in Korea on June 3rd, the main day of the election. So citizens living abroad who are visiting Korea can actually join domestic voters at designated polling stations, but that's only if they sign up in person between next Monday and June 3rd at an election office with jurisdiction over their previous or last registered Korean address. So for more information, do visit ova.nec.go.kr.
All right. Well, for the next 6 days, it'll be decision time for overseas Korean voters. Soo-young, thank you for coming in today.
Thanks for having me, Tammy.
U.S. President Donald Trump held a rare phone call with Russian President Vladimir Putin in his latest effort to end the prolonged war in Ukraine. The call did last more than 2 hours, but there appears to have been little sign of a breakthrough on the peace talks. Tues reports.
Following the much-anticipated call between leaders from Washington and Moscow, U.S. President Donald Trump said he made progress during his conversation on Monday with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin. He proclaimed on his social media that the call went very well and that Russia and Ukraine had agreed to immediately start negotiations toward a ceasefire, without providing details on when that will happen.
We just spent 2.5 hours talking to Vladimir Putin, and I think some progress has been made.
Putin, who described the call as meaningful and frank, said Russia is ready to work with Ukraine on a memorandum on a possible future peace agreement. But he did not address demands from the U.S. and European countries for an unconditional 30-day ceasefire, meaning no major breakthrough in ending the war.
At the same time, I would like to note that in general, Russia's position is clear. The main thing for us is to eliminate the root causes of this crisis.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said he also spoke with Trump before the American leader's call with Putin. He called for an unconditional ceasefire, while urging stronger U.S. sanctions if Russia is not ready to end the war.
I asked him, before his conversation with Putin, not to make decisions about Ukraine without us. We agreed that we would get in touch after his conversation with Putin.
Zelensky also urged Washington not to distance itself from peace talks, saying he is considering a high-level meeting between Ukraine, Russia, the U.S., and European countries. This comes after Trump said the conditions of a peace deal could only be negotiated between Russia and Ukraine, possibly with the help of the Pope, leading to speculation that this signals a possible shift in his stance, that he was leaving the two countries to find a deal without the U.S. as a broker. Arirang News.
Israel continued its airstrikes across Gaza Strip on Monday, increasing pressure on Hamas. While it targeted some 160 sites throughout the enclave, Israel also began letting in humanitarian aid amid global concerns of a famine crisis. Lee Seung-ja has more.
The Israeli military, which recently launched Operation Gideon's Chariots, aimed at recapturing the Gaza Strip, announced it had struck some 160 targets, including Hamas infrastructure. However, according to Al Jazeera, airstrikes also targeted several hospitals across the enclave. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu released a video statement on the same day, vowing to make progress amid fierce fighting, adding that Israel will take control of the entire Gaza Strip. The remark was slammed by Britain, France, and Canada, who were critical of Israel's expansion of its war, as they vowed a concrete response if Israel's campaign continues. Also following pressure from around the globe over the blocking of any humanitarian aid into the region, Israel has begun allowing some trucks carrying necessities.
Today, Israel is facilitating the entry of trucks with baby food into Gaza. In the coming days, Israel will facilitate the entry of dozens of aid trucks.
The Director General of Israel's Foreign Ministry, Eden Bartal, said Israel always complies with international law and with its obligations and statements. However, he was critical of the recent condemnation, saying the international community must decide whether to side with Israel or Hamas. He added that the aid that began coming in will only cover a few days. The Foreign Ministry official also stressed that the humanitarian aid is to help the population, not to support Hamas. Lee Seung-ja, Arirang News.
A group of South Korean officials is set to travel to Washington, D.C. on Tuesday to hold working-level talks with the U.S. over tariffs. The two sides are expected to hold discussions focused on 6 key areas, including economic security and digital trade. This comes after Seoul's Trade Minister An Deok-gun met with U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer here in South Korea last week and requested exemptions from higher levies. South Korea, which faces 25% U.S. reciprocal tariffs, is seeking a trade deal before the July 8th deadline, when the temporary pause on tariffs is lifted. And Washington says that trade negotiations with a number of its trading partners are very close to the finish line, signaling optimism that agreements could be reached within the next few weeks. Speaking to Fox Business on Monday, a chairperson of the U.S. National Economic Council, Kevin Hassett, said that the U.S. is closing in on trade deals with several countries. Regarding negotiations with India, Hassett said that while it's up to the negotiators, India is showing a very open attitude. He also voiced his hope that India will become a good negotiation model for other countries in Asia. In other news, May is an especially busy month for farmers here in the country, and seasonal workers from neighboring countries are offering much-needed assistance. Our Park Kwon-woo tells us more.
A vast area of crop fields stretches across Cheongyang-gun County in Chungcheongnam-do Province, a countryside region where farming is central. It's easy to find land and vinyl greenhouses here, but much harder to find people to farm them, especially in May, Korea's peak farming season. That's a sharp contrast to the past, when entire villages in rural regions work side by side in the traditional Tues system during busy times. But with Korea's aging population and younger people moving to cities, rural labor shortages have become a growing challenge. That's where new helping hands are stepping in. Foreign seasonal workers employed legally under Korea's E-8 visa program from 2017. Dressed in farming gear, those workers began their work early, braving the heat and humidity. On this day, they cleared frost protection plastic from the soil and carried heavy metal pipes used to support crops, all while wading through muddy fields. I've only been working alongside them in this pepper field for a few minutes, and I'm already starting to sweat. But it's these foreign workers who help local farmers do this every single day. Though language can be a barrier, many see this as a chance to learn.
Working here isn't too hard, especially knowing I can send money home to my family. Communication can be difficult at times, but I'm learning a lot, using farming machines and new techniques that I hope to take back and use on my own farm someday.
And farmers describe their help as vital.
They're like lifelines for us. Without this workforce, farming in our rural community simply couldn't continue. Without their help, my wife and I could only manage a much smaller piece of land.
Due to its popularity, the number of these workers is growing, with nearly 70,000 foreign seasonal workers coming to Korea this year alone, thousands more than the year before. Local governments are expanding agreements with other cities abroad, and even considering longer-term visas. While the spring remains busy in the countryside, the shoulders of local farmers bearing the weight of our food supply are now a little lighter, thanks to help from afar. 박건우, Arirang News, 청양.
Good morning, I'm Choi Ji-hee, and this is The World Now. 5 years after the United Kingdom departed from the European Union, a new agreement has been reached between the two parties. The deal announced on Monday includes defense cooperation and youth mobility. At a summit in London on May 19th, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen unveiled a comprehensive agreement to improve post-Brexit relations. It includes a new defense and security partnership, granting the UK access to a $200 billion EU defense fund and facilitating joint military procurement and support for Ukraine's defense. The agreement also extends mutual fishing access for 12 years, allowing EU vessels to continue operating in UK waters. A youth mobility scheme will facilitate temporary work and study exchanges between the UK and EU member states. British travelers will also benefit from faster airport procedures through EU e-gates. Prime Minister Starmer lauded the agreement as a win-win, while EU Commissioner Ursula von der Leyen described the progress as historic. The U.S. Supreme Court has allowed the Trump administration to terminate the temporary protected status for approximately 350,000 Venezuelan nationals living in the country. In an unsigned order on Monday, the Supreme Court lifted a lower court's injunction that blocked the Department of Homeland Security's attempt to end TPS for Venezuelans. This decision allows the administration to revoke protections extended until October 2026 during the Biden administration. TPS provides temporary legal status and work authorization to individuals from countries experiencing severe crises. The Biden administration granted Venezuelans an extension of the status in response to ongoing political and economic instability in Venezuela. TPS has also been removed for nationals from Afghanistan and Cameroon as part of the Trump administration's efforts to tighten immigration policies. Former U.S. President Joe Biden expressed gratitude for the support he has received from around the world after announcing on Sunday that he has been diagnosed with an aggressive form of prostate cancer that has metastasized to the bones. Biden wrote on his social media on Monday, "Cancer touches us all, and that he and his wife Jill have learned that you're strongest in the broken places." Reacting to the announcement, President Donald Trump said Biden's diagnosis was very sad, but added that he was surprised it wasn't detected earlier. At the same time, he and First Lady Melania wished Biden a fast and successful recovery. While not curable, experts note that effective management can allow patients to live for several years. Finally, in Denmark, the 14th Hundested Sand Sculpture Festival kicks off on Friday. The annual event will feature sand sculptures crafted by 16 international artists, centered around this year's theme of Showtime. Visitors can expect to see detailed representations of entertainment icons such as Charlie Chaplin and Miss Piggy, as well as circus clowns. The festival also offers diverse family-friendly activities, including sculpting workshops, sand painting, and treasure hunts. As the festival runs through October 19th, the sculptures are made of sand mixed with clay to ensure they last until autumn. The sand is reused each year.
Central areas might see some lingering sprinkles and some clouds pop up here and there. But overall, it's shaping up to be a bright day with summer heat. And especially those in Daegu and Gyeongsang-Pukdo province will notice highs easily surpassing 30 degrees Celsius this afternoon. I had to double check to make sure I got the numbers right this morning. UV rays will be very strong in those areas as well, so make sure to stay safe in the heat and intense sunlight. Daegu, Gwangju both see a high of 32 degrees Celsius. Seoul getting up to 26 degrees, but Daejeon at 31 degrees. Then, as we have seen lately, a quick change in the weather with rain is on the horizon for tomorrow. It will start on Jeju tonight, spreading to the south coast overnight before expanding to mostly eastern parts of Korea until Thursday. Meanwhile, this rain could cause temperatures to rise even further in the central regions tomorrow. So Seoul could see a high of 28 degrees Celsius on Wednesday under cloudy to sunny skies this week.
That is all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.